Well, hello everybody. Happy Sunday to you. Today we're going to be doing some nature journaling cross training with mixed media in the studio because there's a lot of things that you can practice at home that are going to help you see and draw better when you're out nature journaling in the field. So I'm going to switch to my action camera here. I think John Muir Laws calls it an action camera, and let's look at some different stuff. I also am going to talk about some really surprising things. For example, what item in your first aid kit can be used for art supplies? I also have one of these pop sockets here. Some of you might know what this has to do with art supplies. I have this micro palette. I know I talked a little bit of poo-poo about it when I first got it. Well, Christina Wald gave it to me, which is super awesome. And she does some amazing sketching and stuff like that. And I did poo-poo on it a little bit at first, but I did try it and I made some YouTube shorts about it. So if you've never seen my YouTube shorts, they're 15 or 60-second videos, and they're pretty funny. Most of the ones on YouTube aren't that great, in my opinion. They can be entertaining, but I've been trying to make a few about art and nature and stuff like that. So I made a few videos with this, and I'm going to talk about it today because we're going to talk about gouache. We're going to talk about ink, and hopefully that camera is showing you what you need to see. It's not the best camera in the world. Hi, Suzanne. Hi, Susan. Hi, James. Oh, Suzanne made it today. We were talking about you, I think, on Wednesday. As I know you're not usually at the Wednesday lives. And we're talking about how many different Susans and Suzannes there were. I'm also going to talk about black ink, and I've been experimenting with it. Oh, Karen's here today. Also, Karen, there was a special mention of you on Wednesday as well. So here's some stuff I've been doing with ink, and you can see there's repetition here going because I had a photo that I took. So no copyright infringement issues there. So a photo that I took of this is the most photographed frog in the entire world, photographed species of frog. And I did some warm-up sketches and just some playing around here with ink and blocking in shapes and gouache. And I'm going to tell you about that more soon. Some of you might have been there for the show where I did this. We looked at a photo of a cactus finch in the Galapagos, also a photo I took luckily, so I don't have to worry about copyright stuff. And I did a bunch of sketches of this exact same composition. So we will talk about some composition today. Oh my gosh, even Sandra's here today. Amazing. Sandra just got back from nature journaling in Tanzania. And so this is a composition and something that I want to work on in the future. And this was just done with this really, really fun. I think what happened is I realized I had one of these Pentel Aquash gray ink pens. And let me see if I can get the light. It's even a bit better. It's a balancing act in here. Okay, maybe I can take this one out completely. I know, I just need to get it more in here. Sorry about the technical difficulties in the shed studio. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay, so this pen right here is super fun, and it's like the exact same body, and this is going to be a way cheaper. I'm going to show you a cheaper trick, but it has nice ink. They call it light black, but it's basically gray. This is it here. I used to use it for lettering. I think I talked about it in the video last week. It's really fun, and as soon as I got this or realized that I had one that still had some ink in it in a box, I got it out and I just did a bunch of sketches because it's really fun. And drawing with a brush, I'm not used to drawing with a brush. I'm used to drawing with like a brush pen, the ones that I've been reviewing recently, that basically has a modified felt tip. And I'm used to drawing with more, like dry media, like a pencil or something that operates like a pencil. A brush with actual bristles, even though I paint with these all the time, I'm not used to actually drawing with them. So one thing that I want to do is get more used to drawing with actual bristle type brushes. So we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about some ink, drawing directly with ink, which is fun. Yeah, I'll put it up there. I'll put that link up later because it's a hard one. It can be actually a hard one to find, and the names for it change a lot. Some of the Japanese art supplies, the way that the name gets translated will change, and it can be confusing. I'm going to adjust the light situation here, which is basically a big piece of drawing paper against the window. And this camera is really finicky with light and overexposure, so sorry about that. Okay, and then also another thing, this is not the secret thing from the first aid kit that you can use for art supplies, but I am going to just use this leftover, this empty ibuprofen, and some of the I'm going to use it as like a thing to put water in. I went to a figure drawing class the other day and didn't have a water holder, and I felt bad, so I was making a mess. And then we're going to talk about how this connects back to nature journaling done in the field. So all of these sketches were done in the field with a brush pen and then watercolor. And it was starting to drizzle. There was tons of people all around, and these birds are moving at real life speeds. So this is the kind, but I was able to capture a page here, I think, that does communicate the information, even with the camera not focusing very well or getting messed up because of the light. This information communicates. So not to get into a debate now about like how to aesthetically judge a nature journal page, but there's certain things that can communicate the information, or be bolder or be faster to communicate the information than other things. So like, you know, if you've seen my really early journals, it was all graphite pencil, mechanical pencil, a great mechanical pencil, and then watercolor, but it would be so pale that it would be really hard to see. And from this distance, you might not even be able to tell what was going on. And telling that story and that information is one of the goals of drawing and nature journaling. So I think being able to capture it fast. Here's some more from the San Diego Zoo. These are these really crazy looking pigeons, very challenging subject. So how does all of this stuff that you do at home apply to what you're trying to do in the field? So let's dive in. Oh, Yve is here. I don't have I'll have to copy and paste the link later, Tamara, or if you look through my video, any of my videos where I've talked about brush pens the last couple of weekends, I would have mentioned it in the YouTube video description. So down below the video. Here's some more examples where I was experimenting. Some of you saw this. I think this was a live video last time. I have a bunch of figure drawings in here. I just found a figure drawing group nearby, but I'm not going to show them on YouTube because there's nudity. It's okay. Everybody's over 18, and it's all about the art. It's actually really interesting. If you've never drawn naked people before, I highly recommend it. It's a classic art practice for a reason. Okay, let's see. So what are we going to try to do first? I am going to do experimenting with a palette here as well. I wonder if I should just start with that. Yeah, maybe I will do that. So what we're going to do actually is we're going to look at some gouache here and figure out what to do with it, because so far I'll show you what I've been doing with it and the big mess that I made. I tried putting gouache into this watercolor palette here. Some of you may know about this, and luckily I didn't do every single one of these. This is the same palette. This is the same John Muir Laws palette that I use for everything else. I wonder if I could get light to come in for this. Sorry, I'm still messing with the light situation here. Just a little bit. The light in storage sheds is not always the best. I mean, this is probably better than most. Okay, sorry about that. Let's just go with it. And this palette didn't end up working great. It's not really made for gouache. What I learned afterwards is the way that Liz Clayton Fuller does it, which is what I would highly recommend. And I think this is what I just recently interviewed. Oh no, I'm blanking on her name. Ellen? I just recently interviewed a new nature journaler, Emily's nature journal, and she uses gouache, and it was really interesting. I never heard of that one before, but it's also in sealed containers. So it's almost like a Tupperware with individual little sections, and you can keep gouache in there. Okay, so that's one thing. Or there's other people like James Gurney or Timothy Joe and some other people that I've talked to on the Nature Journal show. They just take gouache like this with them, even into the field in the tubes, and then they squeeze it out like in a big mixing thing. And I'll show you this um, thing that I bought online. And this is why you should always double check on the size of things when you buy it online. I had no idea. I had no idea this was going to be this heavy. Obviously, this is not something I would take nature journaling into the field. And I don't even, this thing is like, I could do workouts with this thing because it's so heavy. But that's the other way people often use gouache, is they'll put it into, they'll keep it in the tubes, and they'll put maybe a limited palette out here and mix it in the field. I'm not that great with a limited palette. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm actually going to try to do something that John Muir Laws did in a video, and he used gauze, and that's going to be the secret ingredient from the first aid kit that I'm going to get into. Because what I want to do is I want to put, hopefully there's spaces in here. I'm going to put some gouache into this kit right here. And this kit's going to get sent around to my Patreon patrons, but I'm going to show you how to put gouache and gauze, the two hardest words to spell that start with G, are going to be in this video. So get ready for that. And I'm going to try to set this up so that it doesn't get all cakey and fall out, because that is what happened to the stuff that I put into this, and it was almost like a total waste. So we're gonna find out if this works. It might not work, and we're about to find out. So a couple things that I recommend having if you're doing anything with your own paint tubes, and this applies also to watercolors. If you're going to start buying your own tubes, there's a couple things that are really useful. I keep these are mini channel locks. They are super cute, and I actually end up using them. I used to carry them around in my pocket all the time with my keys. They're really light, and these are really useful because look, you can adjust the size of the opening. That's what channel locks do. And I've never seen them this small before. They used to have the blue thing on, like all the rest of them have that blue plastic. They're really strong, and you could even practically use them for some of the tasks that pliers, obviously pliers would be used for, but even tweezers, because they'll grab small things. But I keep those in here. You have to be careful because you don't want to crush the lids, but a lot of times these lids are going to get hard to open. So having this in there is really good. It looks like a lot of comments going on in the live chat. Bridget is here, just started using gouache. Welcome to the channel, Bridget. Oh, Sandra already pointed out the correct spelling of gauze. Thank you. We've got our spelling inspector. And Evea is wondering about the Altoid. I still haven't done that, but this will be very similar to that. Bridget just started nature journaling. Cool. Traveling with ink. Yes. You know, the only thing that I did for the whole last year is I did travel with a whole container of ink, not this Higgins ink, but the carbon platinum, which you've seen me talk about. And all I did was refill my Fude de Monin fountain pen. I did not do anything with ink wash, which is what I'm going to do today and what I've been playing around with lately. If you're painting with brushes and using an ink wash, that is pretty messy, and I've not done that in the field. I have used fountain pens and refilled fountain pens in the field, which does feel pretty messy and scary, but it's usually doable. But the ink wash, that's going to be really hard, and it's a lot more material to carry. Terry is here. Marie LaFay is here. Oh, yay. Thanks for joining in, and thanks for commenting. I know there's a lot of people who watch and don't always comment, but it's nice to see you and hear your names. Yes, James, very good point. There are, and I used to play with those. If you go, usually in the art store, if you go to the place where they have they will also have colored acrylic inks, and James has mentioned this before. There's colored acrylic inks, and then there's, I guess, this, for example, is not acrylic. So this is not going to be something that is going to dry out completely opaque. It's actually transparent and is more similar to watercolor. Once you get into the acrylic inks, those can be stronger and more opaque colors. So like you could paint if you had a pale yellow or pale red acrylic ink, you could probably paint over a black and be able to not be able to cover up the black. You wouldn't be able to do that with watercolor. So those acrylic inks, though, you have to be careful what you put them in because they do cake up more. And you can get a wide range of colors, and they can be fun. I think people use them maybe in things even like for different spray type techniques. But I've only played with them with dip pens and with brushes. You wouldn't be able to put it in. I don't think you'd want to put them in anything like this. It would probably destroy a fountain pen. And they can be fun. Limited number of colors as well. But what you could do is you could put that one of those inks. I put a purple acrylic ink into the reservoir on a water brush before, and it was just like using this pen right here with the gray, but with a purple color, and I used it for borders and everything. That is a good, can be a fun thing to do. Oh, I will have to check those out. Thanks for recommending Sarah Burns. Okay, cool. Good to know. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna fill some of these and show you this technique where, let's get this gauze out. So the good thing about being in this storage shed is it's also the earthquake survival rations shed. So that means that I put a first aid kit in here for my mom's house. And I think there should be gauze in here because I think that might be the trick to, there's a survival wrap. That's always fun. A light stick. Oh, maybe that would help filming this video. For some reason, I don't think it's gonna be that bright. Some really bad looking tweezers. Oh, I guess they're supposed to be locking, but they don't lock. Don't tell me there's no gauze in here. iPress, iPad. Gotta have that. You never know when you're gonna need an iPad. Here we go. New gauze. All right, so technically I should probably mark on here on the top that I used some of the gauze, but that's what you're supposed to do. Yes, good point. Oops, I got the tongue depressor too. That could be used for art supplies, I'm sure. I'll keep that out. It's a really nice tongue depressor. Okay. So the trick here is to cut these into little squares and use them sort of the same way that rebar gets used in concrete. If anyone did that video with Jack and actually used this method, please say something in the comments, because I've watched it a long time ago and been wanting to do it forever and then haven't. All right. So now I need my scissors. Oh, look, it has so many layers. I think I just need the thinnest layer possible. I also need to take out some of the watercolor that's in these right now. Some of you, I might do this in well, actually, as a practice, maybe I'll just do it in this other palette. Yes, I will do it in this other palette and do the art toolkit later. The other thing you can do, and I did this on the last one, is you can scrape the bottom of the plastic on plastic ones, or otherwise roughen it up. And that's usually enough for watercolors not to pop out, but it won't be enough for the gouache. I should probably mute the microphone for this terrible sound. Okay. These are supposed to be really sharp scissors, but they're not cutting very well. Let me see what other scissors I have. Oops, that's not quite the right size. Not even close. I don't know why, but sometimes I have resistance to measuring things. Or if I'm going to measure something, I'm going to be so precise, it's going to take me like 3 days to cut the piece of gauze. That's good enough. Okay, here we go. Here we go. David. Thank you, David. Oh, okay, great. I wonder if anyone else has used that gauze method. When I saw him do that, I was really surprised. I had never heard of that before. And I want to make sure it's tested and not just some. It sounds like a really good idea, and it's, you know, it's John Muir laws, but I want to talk to him like a few years down the road and see how that's working to make sure. And then I think, I mean, because I even had them popping out. I had gouache popping out of this, and the little segments in this one are even smaller. Like those are really small, and it was just kind of a mess. Ooh, it's still kind of moist in there. That's interesting. Okay, cool. Now I have gouache on my fingers. All right, and then after this, we can try drawing one of those frogs or something. So to start with, I'm going to use some of those paler colors. Where'd they go? Oh, I do have acrylic gouache here also that we could try painting with a little bit of that. I have stuff everywhere. All right, so I'm going to start first with, this is like a primary yellow. It's lemon yellow, so it is more saturated and it's more cool basically. Also, it's the actual primary should be close to the actual primary. And I think I'm just going to leave that one blank to put white in that one. And then I'm going to put, if I have any orange, orange light colors. Let's see. Only in the acrylic gouache, and I don't want that. Oh, I have yellow ochre, so I'm going to put that. And there's something Jack said about shaking it. Oh, it almost flew out of the whole thing. But what I have is a small palette to deal with that anyway, so I'm not too worried. I'm actually going to build this in case I get more watercolors in the meantime, or more colors of gouache. I'm trying not to get into like the full-on accumulation mode again and accumulate too many art supplies, because I might be nomadic again soon, and it's hard. It's easy once you're in one place to start accumulating them. It looked like it was just going to pull up with the whole, that looked like it was going to pop out worse than. Oh, you know what? I think I was supposed to put some down before I put the gouache down. That's what I was supposed to do. Whoops. I'll just rub it through the gouache. Okay, and then the leftover. This is a really great palette knife for doing this. Put the leftover in there, and I'll hopefully paint with that in the next hour. Having a wet paper towel on hand is the best. Mine is dry, but yeah, see, I should have put some gouache in first. When I'm filming live videos, I usually mess things like this up more frequently than when I'm doing it by myself, because I'm talking to all of you wonderful people at home. Talking to wonderful people while completing an unrelated task is one of the main causes of accidents at nuclear power plants and driving trains and planes and automobiles. So ideally, theoretically, this gauze is somehow creating like a network, almost like rebar, connecting all of the parts of this liquid together. And then when the liquid solidifies, if any cracks do form, they won't threaten the connection that's created by that. It's very similar to how rebar works inside of concrete. No, James, I have not tried that pen yet. And I've tried several other, like Eli gave me a really cool fountain pen also. But for the most part, fountain pens feel kind of weird to me. I haven't quite gotten used to using them yet. So I have not invested in that. So I'm going to start with these and test these and make sure that these actually work before I fill up this palette. I was originally planning on filling up this palette live, but I will do that separately. And look at how I love how this art toolkit should sell these, because these little channel locks are perfect for lifting out their trays. I think. I mean, maybe I have to still take out two at a time, but it's like the perfect tool. So later I'm going to go through, and I'm also going to clean and oil, or very lightly oil this magnet, as I now learn that that is the way to take care of them, thanks to Susan, who's here this afternoon. So once that is fixed up and has some gouache in it, it's going to get mailed out in the traveling art toolkit, which is something that I set up for my Patreon. And this is just this cool little palette slides right in here. And I'm getting a new sketchbook. That's what we're waiting on, is I'm getting a, it's not a Stillman and Burn, I don't think, because they might have been out. but it should be coming soon, a toned paper sketchbook that can go in here and be used with gouache, because gouache and toned paper are the way to go. All right, I'm going to try to get the light a little bit brighter here, because now we're going to go to the drawing and painting stage, and hopefully you won't need such a close-up, because I'm trying to develop more of a bold, fast style that can capture information easily and fault tolerantly in the field, and then communicate that information easily and clearly to people, even when the camera is not perfect. So that is my goal with my nature journaling artistic style. What is your goal? What kind of cross training will help you with your goal? And how can you get in the habit of making that a reality and be intentional about our art style? And like, what is the intention? My intention, like I just said, is to capture that information in difficult field situations and then communicate it in compelling ways. So depending on what your goals are, you can develop your art style instead of just kind of haphazardly blundering into it, or thinking that you have your style, but it's actually just your sort of creative boundaries that have been kind of arbitrarily imposed based on, you know, what came easier for you or what you were exposed to. So there can be a lot of lack of intention. There can be a lack of intention when it comes to that. Oh, before I drink my tea and start painting, there's one more thing I'm going to do. And oil the bottom. Yeah, oil the bottom. That sounds kind of naughty when you say it just like that. Maybe you could remind us of the context. James, I have used them. It was only in a little sample packet. I'm sort of hesitant to experiment, or for the last almost 10 years, I've been pretty hesitant to experiment. Actually, it's been just the last 3 or 4 years that I started to do it. Notice that I didn't follow the directions that it gave for how to cut the bottom, which seems very small writing. I have been kind of just trying to stick to the John Muir Laws watercolor palette and just learn those colors the best I could, so that I could, in the field, really easily be able to find the color that I needed. So experimenting with different brands and different, you know, individual colors is something that I sort of shied away from for the last 5 years, because I wanted to get really good at those colors and not have to second guess my setup in the field. Because like I said, my intention was to be able to, in a fault tolerant way, capture that information in the field. And trying a bunch of different colors sometimes can get in the way of that. So one thing I noticed about this kit is that it doesn't hold in the hand. Going back to, you know, my watercolor kit that I use, this, even though it's smaller, it's like half the size of my regular one, which is this size. It wasn't really easy for me to hold in any way, and multiple other people mentioned this. It is possible to clip these palettes. Like, it would be great with this huge drawing board that I'm using, you know, but in the fields, unless you set it on the ground, I found it was hard to hold. Some people in my Patreon said, put one of those pop socket things like on a phone on it and see if that works. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Should probably clean this with like a solvent. Do I have any solvents in here? Not really. The only one I have has aloe vera in it, and I don't think that's good. So, and is this the right side? Yes, this is the right side. So unfortunately, it's going to cover up their cool logo, but was I supposed to read instructions about how to make this thing stick? It's just a sticker, right? It should be. All right, so I probably shouldn't use it right away, but let's see if this makes any sense it's sort of taking away from the sleekness. You know, there's sort of like a maybe they have the same designer as the guy who designed the stuff for Steve Jobs, but it's, you know, it's a very sleek watercolor palette compared to most of them, which are these, you know, janky plastic things, which even though this is my favorite one and I have attachment to this style and this design, and it's pretty functional, it's like it doesn't have that feeling that, you know, like this is like the kind of palette Mercedes-Benz would make. So or like something that, you know, nice stuff would come in. Um, and this sort of takes away a little bit from that, but we'll see once it's dried out. Also, it's not going to slip into things as easily, but we'll see how it works. Hopefully I'll have it ready to send out to Patreon members soon, because I'm going to be off the internet for a little bit coming up. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to paint a little bit with ink, and we're going to paint a little bit, and I'm going to do it right in here. I know this is probably a huge no-no. And then we're going to do a little bit of gouache on top of the ink and see how it goes. Let me see if I can. I probably can't share that photo. Art Toolkit is having a sale right now. Better watch out. Let's see what kind of frog pictures we've got here. I think we're going to just do that same one. All right, so let's see if I can share my screen here. Put away all my secret plans from my desktop. All right, it looks like I'm not going to be able to do the screen share. Yeah, that's not going to work. Okay, you're just gonna have to watch me do a quick painting of it, but it will be quick, and that is the benefit of using these materials. So I'm actually going to use the brushes that I got to use with the gouache, which are this one and this one, which you haven't seen me use yet. And these are the ones that I used at the figure drawing group the other day. I got them to work with gouache, sort of the way that James Gurney does, but I've actually been using them for ink and found that it was a good way to force me to make decisions quickly. And so, let's see, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm actually gonna draw from a drawing, which is weird, but people have been doing that for a long time too. Good point. Very interesting. Very interesting, James. Well, you might be able to mix them since there's all the primaries are in there, but for sure, if you want, you know, there's a lot of specific colors in the John Muir Laws palette that if they're not specifically needed in someone else's place, then they're not useful. And there's probably other colors, pre-mixed colors, that would be more useful. So a very good point. I think his was developed, you know, for California in a lot of ways. I've used it a lot of places besides California, but if someone is developing a palette in a particular place and there's a certain color that's really common and often needed, then it makes total sense to choose some other ones. That is a good point. Like the Serpentine Genuine seems like a real California green color, and we might have less of the saturated greens during the green season. Okay, so maybe a little bit more water. Oh, that's all I can put in that one. I haven't used this huge ceramic plate thing yet, but I'm a little bit intimidated to try it. So I'm gonna try to do two. I'm gonna try to be disciplined here and do 3 different values in here and show you that way of working with ink wash, because that's like the traditional tried and true way. So what you do is you should have one thing with just clean water, which is this. It's not the best thing for water, but that's what I'm doing. And then you get your ink, and you never need as much. You always put more than you think. I mean, you always put more. You always think you need more than you actually do. So I'm just going to put a few drops, and there's a little bit of water here already, so it's not going to be completely pure ink, but ideally, see, I'll put like 4 or 5 drops. Ideally, you want one section that is just pure black, and this trains you in understanding values. And I think understanding values can be the thing that makes a difference between whether a drawing works or a drawing doesn't work. And people don't realize that that's what's happening, but it often can be a value issue. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of the stuff that's in the pure ink. Dang, this is making me hungry having this plate here. Like there could be sushi on here or something. So I'm going to take a little bit of this and I'm going to mix into this one that already has water. This can be like my value number 2. Maybe that's a lot. So see how light that one is? It's still a little bit dark. I'm going to add a little bit more water to this one right now because I don't have a good setup. I haven't been doing this kind of art lately, so I don't have a good setup. I'm just using my water brushes to provide water. There's probably a better way to do that. Still really dark. It takes longer to dilute these things than you realize. Ideally, start with the least amount of ink that you can. But I think I'll just go with this. It's not going to be, it's not completely black, but it is a very dark medium value. So I'll have a dark lightest value too, so that they're all kind of in the same place. And then I will have white. So I'm actually going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 values, and I'm going to try not to make any middle tones between those. See, that's really close to my second one. So I need to make this light a little bit lighter and the other one a little bit darker, maybe. All right, that's good. That's a perfect for that one. Okay, so this frog doesn't have a ton of different values, but what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to look at this and see what I did this with landscapes too, and it was really an interesting practice. Let me show you that actually. I forgot. That was the first thing I did with this ink when I got it. So see this? This is out of imagination, but this is using ink wash. And I think I just had one and added water in as I went, but using ink wash to do sort of a landscape and separate it into values. Here there is 1, 2, 3, 4 values basically. There might be a half the value here. So 4 values to show the whole thing. And I think that figuring out how to simplify things to what those values are when you're looking at a real landscape can make a big difference between making a good landscape painting and one that just doesn't really make sense. So we're going to try to do something similar like that, looking at this drawing. So where's my tea at? I didn't drink enough tea since my nap. Yes, walnut ink would be so cool to use this way. I think it's always water soluble, but, so painting gouache on top of it might not work, but you might not wanna paint gouache, it would I think the walnut ink is gonna have a really nice feel to it just by itself, and painting just in ink wash, like those drawings that I just showed, um, with, like, 4 values, breaking it up this way would be really cool. I don't think I can hold my brush like in the Chinese calligraphy style, though. That is a great idea. Wait, can you make yes, that is a really great idea, and I think maybe not on the phone, but definitely in some of the, programs, like in Photoshop, you can set how many values there are. So if you wanna see what it would look like with only 5 values, it will break it down into 5 values, just like I'm about to break it down into 4 values right now. So I'm gonna draw with my palest one and get sort of the basic proportions in. I'm gonna try to make it almost the same size as here. Um, so I've got this sort of plant stem coming down here. The frog's gonna be at a weird angle, and then the frog sticks out somewhere around here. I'll make keep it really light though, and then the plant stem comes down. Plant stem comes back up on the other side. The frog's head sticks out somewhere in here, and the eyeball sticks out a little bit like that. So these are my tentative that was my chance to do my tentative lines or some of my tentative lines, of drawing this in while using a really, pale value, but um, now I can easily, uh, put in geez, am I gonna make that I'm gonna make that the medium. I said all this stuff about, having more ink than you needed, and it looks like I'm actually not gonna have enough. So ideally, you mix it enough at the beginning because if you have to mix it again in the middle, it might not be the same value. Figuring out how to block these shapes in can be a really have a really big impact when you're, nature journaling in the field too, and just creating something that's visually appealing. This was surprisingly as I experimented with this yesterday, this was surprisingly more, what's the word, forgiving than I would have expected. I'm also using really cheap paper, but right now, for example, it's not even really fully dry, but I'm just gonna start doing the next part. So for the next part, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to I think I'm gonna paint this whole I think pretty much the whole frog itself. Oh, you know what I should have done? Yeah, the whole frog itself and a lot of the stem, maybe most of the frog, is actually the same color as this background needs to be darker. Shoot. Okay, I'll do that next, but for now, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to paint the middle, oh, I know, maybe I'll use this one if this one's really paler. Shoot, I think my, palest and my second palest ended up being pretty much the same color. So this type of drawing is actually problem solving, and one of the things that you learn in doing this is you learn how to understand the value better and to work back and forth. And I think sometimes in nature journaling, we're not doing that enough to get better at this element of art that other types of artists are getting better at. from their practice, and like for example oil painters or plein air painters, and maybe even comic artists. And so when we're out in the field using watercolor and pens and pencils and the stuff that most, and colored pencils, even most nature journalers use, a lot of times we're not going back and forth with the values, or focusing completely on value. And in this case we have to do that, and you end up learning um, a lot actually. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to get sort of the drawing of the frog just to get the shapes. This is the part that if I were nature journaling, I would be most focused on. It might still be a little bit wet, so it might be kind of wet on wet, but let's just see. It does look like it will be a little bit, but we'll try to be okay with the imperfection. Because pretty soon the imperfections in your art might be the only thing keeping you separate from the AI generated art. Ideally, you do this like a little bit looser than I am, but I'm not really that loose sometimes with the brushwork. All right, so now I'm gonna start just putting in my medium value in some places around the frog. And then I'm actually gonna just go ahead and push this, get this background value correct, which I should have done the first time. And I hope I have enough ink for this. If this were better paper, you wouldn't end up with all of those lines, but this is actually really really cheap paper for, it's not for ink or watercolor. But I don't want to keep, I'm not trying to make drawings to keep. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use this type of drawing to force me to learn certain things as a cross training for nature journaling. And I think each medium has something that you can learn especially well from, or several things. And sometimes it's the ones that we least want to try are the ones that have the thing that we need to learn about. When I was a kid, I tried pastels for like 1 second, and then I just hated them and wouldn't mess around with them. And I think the same thing happened to me with watercolor. I tried it one time. I didn't like the way the thing looked that I made, and then who knows what kind of feedback I got from other people at that time. But all I know is I did not even want to try those things again. And so I didn't really give them a trial period, and I didn't really learn the things that those particular art forms would have taught me if I had continued to practice them for a while. Sometimes the best things in life are just on the other side of something that doesn't feel the best. Okay, so this is still really wet, but basically at this stage, I would probably not mess around with the values that much more, because as you can see, we're working from a drawing. which doesn't help, but almost everything in here is everything else is like the same value. This should be a little bit darker. The background should be a little bit darker, but the frog and the plant are almost the same value. So we would wait for that to dry, and then we could put in our color. But that's basically what the values look like. And you could do this with anything. You could do this with landscapes. It's really useful for landscapes, and basically anything that you want to draw. Some things that are really good are things that have heavy shadows on them, such as like you could do your hand like this. You could do um, bronze sculptures with strong light hitting them. Okay, so I think what we're gonna do is do another one like that with ink while this is drying, and then maybe hopefully we'll have time to do the gouache, or I could just try to play with gouache at the same time while it's all wet. What subject should I use? It's got to be. I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do something totally crazy, and I'm going to. This is a piece of a succulent that I have here. How much time do I have? I need to help my mom with some stuff in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this, and you can do this at home. You can use this subject matter at home with whatever media you have on hand. But what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to paint a value study of this. I'm going to orient it in a way so it looks good for the camera, hopefully, and then I'll try to just leave it in one spot so the shadows don't change. How's the light? The light is coming from a couple places, but maybe I could fix that. Unplug one thing with my foot and drop my ink brush. Okay, so that should make the light. Let me see. That might actually be better for you all. As long as the camera can do it. All right, so go ahead and use whatever stuff you have at home to try to render this. You can nature journal it if you want, like ask questions and make it into a diagram, or you could just practice drawing the shapes. I'm just going to practice drawing the shapes. Oh, thanks for sharing, Sandra. Okay, I'm going to use whatever ink I have in here already. And I'm going to use this. It's actually supposed to be my darkest, but it's the same as my middle now. So we're going for the less precise way, but I basically have like 3 values already mixed. I'm going to use this I'm actually going to use this smaller one for my drawing this time, I think. And remember, I'm actually looking at it at a slightly different angle than you are at home. If you have an art supply that you're not as comfortable using, this is a good time for you to give yourself the permission to use it for a little bit, drawing this piece of succulent here. Some type of, it's in the crassula family. More useful than to call it a succulent. So right now what I'm doing has nothing to do with value. I'm just trying to get a little bit of the shape in, but you can really from the very beginning, if you want to, just draw it purely as a value, and your proportions might get off, but your values will be more precise for sure. That's what I was trying to do a little bit at the figure drawing class yesterday, which was kind of hard because then you mess things up on the human form a couple times, but at least the lights and darks that I was getting were pretty interesting. Those plants sound really cool, James. So right now I have 2 values basically. And I'm realizing that this probably isn't gonna work. I'm using this middle value to paint my shadows, but those probably need to be um, even darker. And everything in this painting needs to be a little darker. So I'm going to paint over the entire shapes, um, but very lightly because I think I want to put, or maybe I'll start that part with the color. So this is the part I probably shouldn't be um, jumping right into. And I'm noticing that this value is going to be as dark as that shadow I put in, so that's not good. So I either need to add white to this, or I need to come back through with a paler shadow color. This is the part where working on tone paper, I think, makes it more intuitive for a lot of people. Because if the paper's toned, then you usually don't have to worry about it being like too pale, and you won't necessarily use it for your highlights. I want a little bit of blue in this and more white. I'm totally making my white very filthy because I don't have any clean water. Ooh, that's a way better color, but I need water. All right, I'm going to try to wrap this up really quickly, and remember that this is supposed to be a quick sketch. And a learning experience, not a traumatizing experience. Playing with some different mixed media, different tools, ink, gouache, pastel, playing with some different stuff, different type of paintbrush, different shape drawing tool is going to help a lot. And sometimes in unexpected ways. Sometimes you don't actually know what you need when it comes to art, I think, and trying different stuff can be a good way to find out what you need and what is out there that you can learn to improve what you're doing. So now I'm going to come in with a darker dark. I know this is still wet. I know I have wet gouache on here, so this could get messy, but I'm willing to risk it. Kind of wish I had some more dark ink. I stopped looking at my subject, which is always a bad sign. Just building up these values, not really worrying about color anymore. I used a limited palette. I basically used 3 colors of gouache. And I think I'm going to, just to make this stand out a little bit more, I'm going to add a little bit darker black on it and then just call it done. But actually, it's a little bit wet still, but let's see. And the good thing about this kind of stuff is it's really cheap. All you need is a cheap brush and a cheap jar of ink, and you can do a lot of art. A lot of great art was done with just that. So a little bit too dark. It's going to make it a little bit more of a cartoony style. And once you start doing these outlines, oh no, now I have to outline a lot to balance it out. Whoops. That's what you get when you use pure black ink. But sometimes you have to push a drawing or a painting too far. And I bet you this will actually show way better, communicate more boldly on the camera. And remember, what is my intention? My intention is to quickly and with the least amount of fuss and most resilience, I want to quickly be able to create images in the field, and I want those images to be able to communicate boldly and convincingly, even when the camera is not good. So I think this actually is helping me get closer to that goal. So what is your goal with your nature journaling? What is your intention? What do you want to achieve in the field? What do you want to learn as you do it? And what do you want to communicate with your images? Base your art style on those goals, and you can actually be intentional about the art style that you train for instead of just haphazardly finding a style based on sort of arbitrary factors that happen, things you were introduced to, things that were easy the first time, things you had a good teacher. Just because you have a really good teacher that teaches a certain artistic media, and you get some adequacy with it, just that doesn't necessarily mean that's the best media for you or the only one for you. So there's these coincidences that are arbitrary in the course of our life that can lead us down a certain artistic path, and we think that that is our style. But what I'm trying to show you today is that you can cross train and you can customize your artistic style for what you want to achieve with your art and your nature journaling. All right, everybody, thanks for joining in today. Sandra, Ivea. Yes, I think it ended up being a lot bolder in the end, Ivea. All right, James, Sandra, Ivea, Suzanne, all the other people who joined in earlier. David, it was great to have David communicate so much. That was cool to see you this time. And see you all on Wednesday. I'll be interviewing Christine Elder about nature sketching and some of the really cool adventures she's going on. And I'll be talking to her on Wednesday. In the meantime, do some nature journaling, do some sketching, think about your intentions, and see you next week. Bye.